Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Arsenal Ramble, where today we're going to be talking about another massive Arsenal win, 4-1 against Leeds United at the Emirates Stadium yesterday afternoon. It was a ginormous step towards that Golden League title that we're also dreaming about. And to help me talk through that is my co-rambler, Dave. How you doing, mate? You all right?
I'm all good, mate. I'm all good, mate. Yeah. 7 straight Premier League wins now for the Arsenal. 8 points clear and 9 games to go. Nice little stat to start you off with there.
Oh,
But yeah, how can you not be good having just heard that?
that is an incredible stat, and especially after the little blip that we had. So we thought, how are we going to bounce back from this? We need to. We were looking at this run and quietly, confidently looking at these games that they were all winnable. But as we know in the Premier League over the last few seasons, there's no easily winnable game in the Premier League unless you're playing Southampton. And so we did, we did. Sorry to Southampton, but they have been really below par this season. At, realistically speaking, you're not going to. Traditionally, we wouldn't win 7 in a row just like that off the bat after a bad run. But to be able to turn it around, it just speaks volumes for this Arsenal team and where we are at the minute. Also, to put this game into context as well, we were following Manchester City beating Liverpool earlier in the day, so that added an extra little spicy bit of pressure on the Arsenal lads to be able to try and keep the pressure back on Man City and keep that 8-point gap. So that's another a little edge that came into the game today, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and when Salah scored that goal to start it all off, I couldn't help but think, cool. This could be it. This could be City dropping points today. But then they just didn't look that great, did they, Liverpool? They didn't really have a grasp of the game, even when they went 1-0 up. And yeah, unfortunately, they couldn't get anything from the game. And that was one of the fixtures that we were looking at, really, and thinking if there's ever a team that could take some points off City, that was one of them. So a little bit disappointing, but as all the boys always say, we just have to focus on ourselves. And we essentially matched their scoreline as well. So yeah, but it's a good point about 7 wins in a row because I think this is the first time under Arteta we have managed to win 7 games in a row in the Premier League. And we've even now surpassed our Premier League points tally from each of the last 5 seasons, despite having 9 games to go. So that just goes to show like where we are as a team right now, and yeah, it's just unbelievable to see.
Yeah, that is ridiculous to be on 72 points at this moment of the season, going to the final running. And just going back to the Manchester City point, all we need to do is either match Man City or better Man City. And the fact that we've got ourselves into the position that we're in where we have this gap, then it has a bit of it gives us an allowance of leeway if we do end up dropping points in certain games. But yeah, Manchester City, I'm sure they're not going to have a completely perfect run towards the final game of the season, and I'm sure we won't either. But for us to be sat with this gap, it gives us that cushion and it takes the pressure off slightly. But if we can go into each game just needing to get those 3 points, then slowly but surely the games are running out for Man City, and the ability for them to be able to claw back that 8-point lead they'll run out of games, they'll run out of time. So we just need to keep focusing ourselves game by game, 3 points, and we're doing great at the minute.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I just said, we just got to focus on ourselves. And I think even Pep Guardiola was asked about this, and he was like, the reporter was saying, "Well, would you rather be in Arsenal's position at the top of the table, or would you rather have your experience of where you are? You've won the league before." And he'd almost just was like laughed. He was like, "Of course, I'd rather be in Arsenal's position. They're points ahead in the table. It means absolutely nothing." So all these pundits coming up at us, we're a young team. We've never done it before. We, we're at the top of the table for a reason because we're winning games and we're only 2 points, 2 goals behind them in goal difference as well. It's not as if we've like fluked it somehow or anything like that. So yeah,
Yeah.
just got to keep going, and like we've obviously done that today. So that's the main thing.
Yeah. So should we jump straight into the game and we'll talk about the team sheets that we selected in the game yesterday against Leeds? We had a couple of our main players, our biggest players really, Saliba and Saka, not starting this game. Saka was on the bench and Saliba is out through injury. This gave me a bit of anxiety going into the match against Leeds, just because of how well they've both been an integral part of our team. Saliba with all of his defensive prowess, his ability to play the ball out, and we kind of kickstart all of our attacks through that centre back pairing. It's like the basis of what we build from the back. So he's so important to the way that we play. And Saka as well. Everybody knows how important Saka is. He's probably, I would say, the best player in this Arsenal team, in a team of great players. So for him to not be starting either, I was a bit worried, to say the least, especially after seeing City had won their game. It kind of made me feel like, are we making the wrong choice by not starting Saka? Because this is a game that we can't afford to drop points in.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, Saka's plays almost every minute of every game, though, hasn't he? Played more minutes than anybody, maybe bar Gabriel at the back. But I think if we didn't have Trossard, then I would be a little bit more anxious. But the fact that we've got, and Jesus back as well, obviously. But the fact that we've got these forward players that are versatile at the end of the day. I mean, it's not Trossard's natural position out there on the right, is it? But he can do a job there, and had it been against a tougher opponent away from home, for example, then yeah, I would be a little bit more concerned that our main man Saka isn't starting. But we've still got by far enough firepower there to be able to beat a Leeds team at home. And with Saliba, yeah, that is a concern for me, because as much as I love Rob Holding, and I think he can do a job, and in terms of a fourth choice centre back, which is essentially what he is, it don't get much better in the Premier League. And he had a pretty good game in the previous fixture, and it's just he's not Saliba at the end of the day. And I think like the news reports that have come out around the extent of Saliba's injury, I don't think it's confirmed yet by the club, so it's still rumour technically, but it looks as if the scan was potentially worse than what it was expected to be. And then they've done another scan, and then they were like, oh, actually, this scan's showing that it might not be as bad as that first scan. So it's all a little bit up in the air. How bad is it actually going to be? Does he need surgery? Can he play these remaining 9 games or however many games? Maybe with an injection, how they can sort of numb the pain to get through games. And it's something that we're just going to have to wait and see for. But I think in the bigger games against Anfield, Liverpool at Anfield this weekend coming, and the City game and Newcastle, I think it's a big loss not having Saliba in there.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's going to be a massive loss any game that we're without Saliba. But as we've touched on, Rob Holding, for all of his potential, pitfalls that he has in his game, especially which we saw last season, he's stepped up, to be fair to him, and he's put in 2 pretty good performances. He's a bit shaky at the start of his first game against Palace last week, before the international break. Sorry, he was a bit shaky in the first half, but he really grew into the game, and you feel like he's a sort of player that he's just happy to be there. He's just happy to be in this Arsenal team, and to be fair to him, he's putting in pretty decent performances. So he's as good of a deputy that we can afford to have, as you say, is a fourth choice centre back. But it's a massive loss, and I'm in 2 minds about whether I would rush Saliba back to try and get us over the line in this season, with potentially damaging his future injuries. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, I wouldn't want to hinder his future as an Arsenal player by rushing him back into this season. However, we might not be in this sort of position in the next few seasons. You know, this could be a one-off. I'm not gonna lie. Like, there's the Liverpool, they'll be back next season. Man City, they'll be at the top next season as well. So it is a bit of a gamble, but yeah, we're just gonna have to wait and see, aren't we?
Yeah, it would be a gamble, and I think player welfare has to be sort of the number one priority with this situation. If Saliba, from his end says that he thinks he can play and he thinks he can manage it, and the club doctors can help him do that, then I think that is an option. But if it becomes a point of that it could impact future injuries and maybe even make things worse, then we have to take that on the chin and put the players' welfare first. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one, and keeping my fingers crossed that it isn't as severe as maybe it could be, and hopefully that we will have him for these remaining 9 games. So like you say, it would be absolutely a huge miss to not have him. Another sort of doubt for this game was Thomas Partey, because he didn't actually feature for the last international fixture. He was benched for that game, and there was a lot of rumours. Was it down to an injury, or was it just sort of a little niggle? And it turned out that he did have a little bit of a muscular injury, and there was sort of rumours that maybe Jorginho would play in his place. But we saw the training pictures come out on the Friday that he did train, so I think it was more of a precaution than anything, and glad to see Partey's fully fit and raring to go.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure, and that's something that I think we've been so smart, especially in the January transfer window, is just bolstering these positions, because, as we say, Thomas Partey, he has these little injuries now and then, and sometimes it looks like a little niggle, as you say, and then he's out for 2 or 3 weeks, and he's quite inconsistent with his fitness, Thomas Partey. So for us to bolster that midfield, get a player in like Jorginho, who's more than competent to be able to fill in his absence. And then, as we say, Xhaka was out the starting lineup, but he was able to be rotated with a player like Trossard. But before the January transfer window, the options for those sort of positions, we're looking at maybe Lokonga instead of Thomas Partey, and then Reece Nelson / Marquinhos maybe for Xhaka. That is just a massive drop off in quality. So for us to do some quite smart hot fixes for not too much of a price was really smart business from Arsenal to get the depth of the squads to what a title winning team should be.
Yeah, if we were to actually win the Premier League title, I think this would go down as one of our best ever January windows, to be honest, especially with Trossard. I mean, he could even go down as one of the best January transfer signings. I can't think of too many better that have come in with an impact that he's had at such a crucial time as well, because we really did need him with the fact that Martinelli was a little bit out of form, and it sort of seemed to kickstart him back into gear as well. We've had some sort of reintegrating into the squad, and he's still not quite there. We all thought he'd be back in January, but here we are in April, and he's still not quite as sharp as he once was. So he's been absolutely phenomenal. And what a transfer window we had in January.
Yeah, and it's great to look at it in retrospect as well, when everybody was losing their minds that we didn't manage to get the Mudryk deal over the line, and that we were signing these so-called secondary options, and then look how they've performed against the likes of Mudryk. It's been quite funny, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. We'll get straight into the game now, because I think we digressed a little bit. So the game started not as high intensity as I would expect it to. I thought we'd come out the blocks and really put pressure on Leeds, but we had a fair bit of the ball, but we weren't really creating too much. We had 1 or 2 fairly decent chances. I think there was a Jesus header where he managed to get himself in a bit of space, but with Jesus's recent form and the form before his injury, you're not really expecting him to score these at the minute. The ball falls to him in the middle of the box, and you're thinking, you just need Jesus to score one of these, and then he's gonna break the duct. I forget the expression, but he's just gonna score as many goals as he physically can.
Yeah, it was an unlucky one, I think. The ball was just a little bit too high for him, wasn't it? He just couldn't quite get over it. But yeah, you sense that as soon as he would get that first initial goal, then the floodgates would open a little bit, and you start to see the Jesus of old. And to be fair, I think he of all of our players was one that was looking the most sharp. I think the international break had a little bit of something to do with it. They did look a little bit jaded, a little bit slow, not quite in the right gear. And Leeds were sort of trying to capitalise on that a little bit. They were looking to break, hit us on the break essentially, and sort of capitalise on our mistakes. And they did almost do that a couple of times, especially within the first half. So we did ride our luck a little bit there, but yeah, I think Jesus was one that was hungry today, and he had a point to prove, and we saw that in that first game back, where a couple of games ago, I think it was, can't remember the team actually, but it was where Vieira just sort of played him through, and he sort of just rifled it right at the keeper, and you could see the disappointment on his face coming off the pitch that day, and it's because if he gets that goal, it's almost like reset button. You're back, and we're here to start again. And especially with the fact that he wasn't firing before his injury as well. I think there was 10 games consecutively where he hadn't scored. So I think that was playing on his mind a little bit, coupled with the injury. So yeah, it felt like a game where, especially with him starting, where he really needed to show that he's back and he's ready to go.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing with Jesus that we all really love about him, is the fact that even though he hasn't been scoring, he's always prodding and probing, and he's buzzing around the box. He gets the ball to feet, he takes defenders on, creates space for other attackers to move into. So he is an asset to the team, whether he scores or not. But yeah, it is that extra goal threat that we do need from him, and that we have needed from him. And luckily today, in the first half, he managed to, give it. Would you say he gave himself an assist with the penalty, because he won the penalty? And then I've had a lot of Leeds fans saying that they didn't think that this was a penalty. But if you have this foul anywhere else on the pitch, you're saying, yeah, fair enough, that's a foul. And the fact that it's in the box, it shouldn't matter really. So Jesus takes on a player, sits him on the floor, and then takes on the second player. I think it was Ayling, who was then on the ground, and he sticks his leg out, which Jesus sees, and he goes to then dribble around him. And then if that was it, then fair enough, no contact. And then it would either be a dive or Jesus would go around him. But then Ayling actually then moves his foot out and kicks with his studs onto Jesus's knee. Malicious, I'd say. I don't quite think it's enough to give him a red, but he's definitely done it to try and impede him and try and foul him. And it is a foul, and it is a penalty. So in my mind, there's no real debate.
I agree with you. I think we've both got friends who are Leeds fans, haven't we? And they were both coming from that same sort of angle of that he's dived for it. And to be honest, I've not heard anybody say that apart from the Leeds fans. Let's be honest a little bit. And even Jamie O'Hara was saying it was a clear foul on TalkSport. So I mean, come on. He is not the biggest fan of Arsenal, let's be honest. So,
says it all.
Yeah, I think we just had our customary Luke Ayling disaster class against Arsenal, as he likes to do every year. Because if you remember last season, I think he got sent off for that awful foul on Martinelli, if you remember. He's an Arsenal lad as well, comes from the Arsenal Academy. That was a bit stupid. I don't know why he's going to ground there. I don't know why he's leaving his leg in there dangling. And yeah, like you say, he basically kicked him. It looked intentional to me. And why you never do that, I do not know. But this is the chaos factor that you were talking about with Jesus. He creates these situations, causes players to commit, um, and these things can happen. We don't really get many penalties, do we, as a club? Um, and we're going to get a hell of a lot more now. We've got Jesus back, and even dangerous free kicks and other set pieces and things like that. These are the little small margins that can really make a difference in games, and I'm just so glad that he's back.
Yeah, and not to discredit Nketiah too much, but you do feel like if Nketiah is in that same position where he receives the ball in the box, he's not going to be able to create that same opportunity to be able to win that penalty. Nketiah would maybe try and open his body up and go for a shot, or maybe make half a yard and go for a shot. But with two players around him, it's quite likely that that would get blocked. So for Jesus to create that moment pretty much out of nothing, given it was a bit more of a stupid mistake from the Leeds player Ayling than Jesus creating it, but he did make him have to create that stupid decision sort of thing. So yeah, it's great to have him back in the team. And initially I thought that Odegaard was going to take the penalty because Saka's our penalty taker and he was on the bench. And you saw Odegaard standing there with the ball in his hands. And I don't know if that was just to maybe take the heat off Jesus a little bit. I think maybe they knew that Jesus was going to take it. He needs to get a goal, but you're not going to have him hold the ball and take all of that flack and pressure just before he takes the penalty, are you? Because if he's that desperate to score, then it might be playing on his mind. So it was good captain's play from Odegaard, that just to hold the ball until right before Jesus took the penalty. And then he converted it really smartly, to be honest. It takes a lot of metal to just roll the ball down the middle, especially when you're desperately needing a goal. But it's one thing that I've always thought, just internally, for me personally, if I was ever going to take a penalty, I think I would go down the middle regardless. Because in that situation, most goalkeepers, they feel a bit stupid if they don't dive for it because, they're like, well, we've not even tried. So 90% of the time, keepers dive for the ball. So I think if I was in the same situation, I would just roll it down the middle. But then obviously you can't make a name for yourself doing that because you look silly, you get egg on your face.
Yeah, it's just one of those where if you just get it a yard either side, you could essentially, they could save it with their feet because if they're diving, they just kick it. Like it does happen sometimes. So you have to be really precise if you're going to go down the middle. So yeah, it was a well taken penalty, and I think it was in the post match interview. He had he was asked sort of, "Are you the second choice penalty taker?" Blah blah blah, and he even talked about how he'd been practicing in training, and he was with Zinchenko doing them, and Zinchenko said, "Oh, I bet in a game you won't go down the middle. I bet you bottle it," sort of thing. So he had a little bit of banter with him after the game to say, "See, I told you I wouldn't." So I thought that was a funny little insight between those two.
Yeah, that was pretty funny, and you could just see the pure elation on his face. Where after he knew that he'd scored and he was running to the corner flag, sort of thing, you could just see how happy he was to have actually finally got that goal. And it's almost like, right, there's no pressure for me to score now, so I can just enjoy my football, and then the goals will follow. And obviously, as we saw later on in the game, that did happen. But yeah, we went 1-0 up, and you were starting to think that Leeds weren't really going to cause us too many problems today. It was just a case of actually getting that first goal.
Oh, 100%, yeah. I think, like we said, we were a bit jaded from the international break. Took us a little bit of time to get into gear, but that goal sort of kick-started everything, and it really enabled us to show what we can do. And yeah, I think from the minute that goal went in, we saw the Arsenal that we were used to seeing, and there was only really ever going to be one outcome from there because the Leeds could really get the ball from then and do anything substantial with it. And yeah, it was just a matter of time really before we got the second.
Yeah, we got the second. And this, again, was wonderful play by Arsenal, and most notably Martinelli, who receives the ball on the left wing. And you think he's going to go on the outside of the player, but Martinelli, with all of his he's so agile, isn't he? He's so good on his feet that he manages to cut inside, completely bamboozles the Leeds player. And then this cross, it was just teasing for anyone to get on the end of it. He kind of puts it in a position in the 6-yard box where if anyone gets anything on it, then it's going in the back of the net. And luckily for us, we had Ben White steaming forward at the back stick. And he actually shows quite a good burst of acceleration, doesn't he, to get past his player and gets the ball first. And initially, I thought he'd skied it over because it hits the underside of the bar, doesn't it? The very start, when I first saw Ben White convert the chance, I thought, oh God, wow, he was 2 yards out, and if he was maybe 3 or 4 yards out, that's going over the bar. But Ben White's got a bit of a taste for scoring now, hasn't he? And I'm happy for that.
Yeah, I am too. To be fair, it was the perfect start to the second half, wasn't it? Because like we were just saying, it was only a matter of time before we got that second. So to get it so soon after the halftime break, it really deflated the Leeds team. And yeah, it was a great bit of play from Martinelli out on the wide. Again, skinning Luke Ayling, just adding to his awful day. And yeah, just a great pick out of the back post. You actually see Ben White pointing to where he wants it as well. It wasn't just a smash it across the box and hope. It was a calculated bit of play there. And yeah, I think I don't think he finished it the way he meant to, but they all count. So we'll take it. And yeah, against his old club as well, where he essentially sort of made his name. I think that breakthrough season at Leeds, where he helped them get promoted to the Premier League. He doesn't seem to have much love for them, though, does he? He seems to still like to rile them up. We'll come on to it a bit later, but right at the end of the game, he was just winding up Meslier in the goal, wasn't he? Did you see that? You just sort of he was basically saying to you, "I'm going to foul you right now and just waste some time." And then the referee was kept breaking it up. Then the cross comes in, and the foul goes, but then the final whistle goes. And I was just thinking that is typical Benny Blanco wind-up merchant. And I love having players like that in your team, just to really get under the skin of the opponents. Love it.
Yeah, we've got a few little characters like that, haven't we? Like Ramsdale as well. And yeah, I think there's no love lost there for Ben White. It was a loan deal, wasn't it, when he was at Leeds? I think was he there on loan? Yeah. So he's not going to have too many attachments. And to be honest, he doesn't even like football. So why is he going to be that bothered about an ex team? I think he just turns up, does his thing, beats Ben White, and goes back to the Tanners afterwards. So, but we love him for it. We absolutely love Ben White, and I think there's no debate really over who's our first choice right back now. I think it was 50-50 at the start of the season between him and Tomiyasu. In fact, Ben White wasn't really a right back at all at the start of the season, but he's fallen into this position and he's just excelled. He had a bit of a dip in form at the start of this year. But apart from that, his defensive prowess, his awareness, his creative play, he's assisting, he's scoring, he dovetails with Xhaka so well. He really is starting to become one of the best right backs in the Premier League. For a player who's not really played right back too often, it's pretty incredible, really, isn't it?
Oh, it is, yeah. I'm so glad we've got him in our team. He's just perfect the way we play. And his offensive game as well is improving week in, week out. His link-up play with Xhaka is phenomenal. And yeah, he's just exactly what we need. And yeah, I'm so glad we've got him. And I think if we can keep him in this form for the remaining 9 games, I think we can really do something. The one worry for me is the fact that we have got Tomiyasu out. And if Ben White were to get injured, then we are really light in that position. I think there were even a few rumours that Ben White wasn't quite 100% for this game. I don't know whether he had the sickness bug that maybe Xhaka had. But Arteta was very clear on communicating this in his post-match, saying how Ben White was insistent that he wanted to play in this game. And obviously, thank God he did, because put in one hell of a performance.
Yeah, exactly. So not too long after that, we actually were riding quite comfortably in the game, and we ended up notching a third to our tally. And this was just a phenomenal goal. The ball gets is pretty much rifled into Trossard, who this spin that he makes, the control and the spin is exquisite. It literally like sticks to his foot like glue, and he spins it round and manages to get past the player, and then all of a sudden he's through on goal. And then he makes such a smart reverse pass, a blind reverse pass, but he knows exactly where Jesus is coming into the box. Straight to Jesus, who then, he's not missing this chance now. He scored his first. As you say, the floodgates have now opened, and he finishes it, well, as you'd expect him to. So, brilliant goal, pretty much made by that Trossard spin. And it just shows you that even without Xhaka in the team, when we have a player like Trossard on the right, he brings something else to the team that maybe Xhaka doesn't. That kind of, I'd say he's more two-footed than Xhaka, so he can go either left or right. I know Xhaka is pretty much irreplaceable, but him, Jesus, Martinelli, they're pretty liquid, aren't they? They can go either way. They can roll on the ball. They can turn and get in behind, and that was created just simply from a pure bit of skill from Trossard, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, and I think he improved a lot in the second half, because in the first half, on the right, he was getting caught out quite a lot, a little bit slow in possession. He was working really well defensively to win the possession back, but he wasn't quite as fluid as he was out there on the left where we normally see him. And I think for this goal, he was asked to be a bit more central. But I think it was the 55th minute we scored this goal. So I think by this point he was playing a bit more central. And yeah, he started to come into his game a lot more. And with this goal, it actually all started with Jesus and ended with Jesus, because Jesus was one that fired it into him. Really good close quarter control. And yeah, he's just his tricky feet. He's a nightmare for players to defend. And especially when you're in the penalty area, they don't want to commit. Because as we saw with the Ayling penalty, that's what can happen with a player that's so tricky and quick on the ball that they don't want to commit, which opens up the space and allows him to slot it back in for the slide in Jesus. So yeah, it was a really clever goal, and I think you could see on Jesus's face that this one meant even more, because it was a non-penalty goal. You could see it felt like really like liberated, just like the fact that he's now back and scoring a brace of goals, let's say. It was a big goal for him, I think.
Yeah, definitely a goal from open play, which he started and finished the move. It's got to really top off his day, especially after getting the penalty goal in the first half. He's going to be so important for us going into the final running, and if he keeps scoring and creating, then we're going to be in really good stead to maybe challenge. Well, I say challenge, maybe even win the title. So, yeah, that's great to see. But we're 3-0 up. We're cruising. We're kind of gone into third gear a little bit, and then unfortunately, this Leeds goal that then comes. I don't even think we did too much wrong in this. We defended it quite well, but then the ball comes outside the box. And to be fair, I think was it Kristensen. I can't remember his name. I think it was Kristensen. He wellies it from outside the box, takes a little deflection, bit of a swerve, and then it just gets away from Ramsdale, and you're then 3-1 up. But yeah, a bit of complacency, I guess. But it doesn't really matter too much in the grand scheme of things. When you're cruising that much, it did feel like it was going to be a bit of a consolation at that point. Like Leeds weren't really creating too much, were they?
No, I think it was still more likely that we would go on and score a fourth than they were to get it back to 3-2. But we saw it before against Palace, didn't we? It's just like when we go behind, not behind, but when we concede, we like to immediately pile on the pressure and ensure that mentality doesn't result in conceding more goals. It was frustrating though, because we were just sort of caught out of possession in the midfield area. And to be honest, the shot by Kristensen was tame. I watched it back on Match of the Day. It was a side-footed effort that would have been very easily saved by Ramsdale had Zinchenko not been there. I don't know whether he'd obscured his vision, but I think it just goes down as a fluke. It's just a really, really unfortunate goal to concede, and I'm more frustrated for Ramsdale than anything because I thought he had a really good game, especially in that first half where he had to put in some quality saves. He had to make a great save within the first 20 seconds, of the game. They sort of sprung us straight away, like we've seen in previous fixtures. And I think he deserved his clean sheet today. And it's more of a shame for him.
Yeah, I think he will be disappointed because this is the sort of game that he's kind of expecting to get a clean sheet in, especially when you're 3-0 up, you're cruising. And then for a goal, to be honest, this is the sort of effort that you're only going to make when you're 3-0 down, really. If it's 0-0, you're not taking that shot from there outside the box. It was almost like a frustration shot. And then, as you say, it was just a bit of a fluky strike. And 9 times out of 10, that flies over the bar. But unfortunately, we ended up conceding. But it didn't dampen our spirits too much because then we went on and got our 4th. Now, this was absolutely superb. I think of all our goals today, we scored pretty different kinds of goals, which was quite nice to see from different players as well. The different sorts of goals that we created. And this time, it was Martin Odegaard who received the ball from Xhaka on the right-hand side. And then he just floats this ball, but with quite a bit of power on it. Takes 3 or 4 Leeds players completely out of the game to Xhaka, who's made a great run into the box. And then from this position that Xhaka's in, it's not easy to finish this. He really has done well to be able to get this, steer it on target to get it in the top left-hand corner. And Xhaka's a player who's not really known for his heading prowess. So for him to score this goal and generate that amount of power, it was really quite impressive, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a brilliant run and an equally brilliant header from Xhaka. And like you say, it's not something we sort of associate with Xhaka. But again, Saka's work out there on the right to draw in 4 Leeds players to open up all that space. And the pass from Odegaard, my word, it was an absolute beauty of a cross. That's just probably my favourite goal of the afternoon, to be honest. It was absolutely perfect, and just I don't think many teams can do anything about that. That was just a brilliant, well-crafted goal of brilliant players.
Yeah, for sure. And it really did have the feel of like a really clean goal that we scored. Like the others were like penalties or tap-ins at the back post, but this was just, Leeds had just scored and it put a little bit of a dampener on the day because we're having a party in the sunshine kind of thing. And then for us to score that and then just, reaffirm that dominance on the game to say, look, we're here. We've matched Man City's score that they scored, that they won earlier in the day. 4-1, we've completely matched them. And it was a great way to top it off. And really happy for Xhaka to get on the score sheet again. It was something that we'd spoke about, how he'd fallen off a little bit, not being on the score sheet. And then he's quickly scored, I think it's 3 goals in the last 5 or something like that. He's had a little flurry of goals, hasn't he?
Yeah, and it's also 4 goals in 4 games for club and country if you're combining the two, because he had a pretty good spell for Switzerland in the most recent international break. So he's on flying form at the minute. Like we were saying with Ben White, we've got all these players that had little iffy periods towards the sort of January February time, and Martinelli as well. You could probably include in that sort of cluster of players, and they're now all starting to really come back into form at the right stage. So it's tantalising, let's just hope that they can keep it up.
Yeah, for sure. So Should we get on to this little melee that happened towards the end of the game? Then was that's something that I actually ended up missing because I had somewhere that I needed to be quite quickly after the game. So talk me through it. Ben White was just winding melee up, or was it just nothing in it?
I mean, it wasn't massive or anything like that. It was just he was just sort of getting it in his way on the line, and the ref were pulling him over just to say, you can't obscure the keeper, and he was. I think you could tell if he was a good lip reader, you could probably get the exact conversation, but he was saying something along the lines of, I'm purposely trying to foul you or something like that, just trying to waste time basically. He knew that the game was dead, and he was just sort of added a bit of housery in, I guess. I mean, I'm not sure if those two ever played together when they were a team. When he was back at Leeds, I'm not sure if they ever crossed paths. But I quite like it. I like the fact that he's that sort of player, and it wasn't really a melee or anything like that. It was just something I noticed. Quite funny.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know if there was any more to it or not, but it's good to know that it was just a little bit of banter from Ben White. And really happy to have won 4-1. We regain our 8 points clear gap between us and Manchester City. Also, we've just seen that Newcastle have ended up beating Manchester United, which then sits them both on 50 points in third and fourth respectively, which drops Tottenham Hotspur out of the top four into fifth place, which is always great to see when we're top of the league, steaming towards the league title. And Spurs really at the minute seem like they're in the bin. Conte's gone. They're having investigations as well, and they're dropping out the top four. So everything's pretty great at the minute, isn't it?
It is, to be fair. I don't want to talk about them too much because I don't know. I just feel like they just deserve it all anyway. The fact that the sporting director was charges from corruption with Juventus, and they still brought him in anyway. It just seemed like an absolute daft appointment. I don't know why you'd ever bring anyone in that has got those sorts of allegations to the name. The Conte thing was farcical, wasn't it? But probably disappointed to see him go. I wish he'd have stayed to the end of the season. Just long may it continue. And I think they've even played a game more than United and Newcastle, and they're still in fifth. Maybe Brighton or Liverpool can even catch them and knock them down even further, make them play in the Conference League.
Yeah, exactly. If you asked any Arsenal fan what a perfect season would be, I think this would be it, and we're living it right now. So we've got to soak it in, and we've got to enjoy it because just as quick as these moments can come, they can leave us again in a couple of seasons' time. So we've got to just enjoy every moment of this Arsenal run and everything that's happening in the Premier League, even to the fact of Chelsea dropping to, I think they're bottom half now. I think they're in 11th place, which is also hilarious. Mudryk underperforming, missing some sitters, a player that we were crying out for, which they hilariously overpaid for. And we have Trossard, who, created an unbelievable goal with some amazing skill today. So it just shows you that we have to have faith in Arteta, have faith in the team. Every player is performing well. Rob Holding coming into the team, massive performance again from him. And everyone's performing to the sort of level that you need to be able to win a title. So it's really nice, really great to see.
It is, yeah. I don't think there's much more to add on that. It was just a perfect day out. Nice sunny home victory. And like you said at the start of the pod, it was a little bit of pressure from City sort of battering Liverpool, really. So we had that sort of mentality aspect of the game, and we passed with flying colours, and they keep throwing these hurdles at us, and we keep jumping over them. It's just, can we keep jumping over them with 9 games to go now?
So, after watching the City Liverpool game, does that give you a bit of hope? Well, a bit of confidence, maybe going into the game next week at Anfield. Do you think?
It did actually, because they cannot defend, can they? I don't know what's happened to their back line, but Van Dijk is nowhere near as strong as he used to be. It looks like he's lost that little bit of pace that helps him out in these situations. And Trent Alexander-Arnold is having an awful period of time. He's just players are bypassing him like he's not even there. Yeah, I think if there's ever a time where we can, really get rid of this awful record we've got at Anfield, this could be it. So yeah, I'd have to say, yeah, it did give me a bit more belief that we could do something. And I think another point as well is their midfield is particularly weak. They had
Mm,
a three of Fabinho, Elliott, and Henderson, and it just when you're matching it with De Bruyne, Gundogan, and I can't remember the third player now; it's escaped me. But for this, I'm talking about the matchup in this Liverpool City game. They just absolutely destroyed them in the midfield, and it did not
yeah,
enable them to get a foothold in that game. And I think we might see something similar, especially if we're playing with Partey and Odegaard, Xhaka. That is just so much stronger than their midfield three.
yeah,
And I think
yeah.
get some real joy there.
Yeah. I think it was Rodri was the third in the Man City setup, but yeah, you've got to be licking your lips when you see the likes of how Alexander Arnold was defending, knowing that you're going to have players like Martinelli running in behind him and trying to take him on. And the same on the opposite side with Saka. I know Robertson, he's been pretty good. I think he's been one of Liverpool's better players this season. But I still think Saka's going to be a difficult challenge for him as well. And then, yeah, the midfield three for Liverpool is just not impressive at all compared to what we're used to seeing back in the days when they had like Wijnaldum and Thiago, etc. And yeah, it's nowhere near that kind of echelon when you compare it to the likes of Odegaard, Partey, Xhaka. I do think there is an aspect of us we kind of underperform when we go away to Anfield. It's one of those bogey grounds like Old Trafford where we tend to go in our shells a little bit in those sort of games. But as we've seen this season, especially, we've kind of righted a lot of wrongs in those games, haven't we? We've been able to, like, going away to Spurs and putting in a great performance, a ground which notoriously we've not done well at in the last few years. So fingers crossed this is our moment to be able to change that and come away with maximum points, because when other than this time is our best opportunity.
Yeah, I've got hope. I mean, the one area that I'd be mindful of is the fact that they have got players like Salah and Gakpo that can create goals out of nothing, but we didn't see that at all at City. In fact, they were very below their usual standards. Gakpo's a little diver as well, I noticed. So I hope that's not something that could haunt us. But we saw it in the first game this season. I think, was it 3-2? Was it 3-2? But we were dominating that game. We still allowed them back into the. I think remember Fabinho scoring that goal that sort of pegged us back to 2-2. And yeah, because we won it with the Saka penalty at the end, didn't we? That's right. It's all coming back to me now, but yeah, it was a closer game than it needed to be. That's what I'm trying to say. And I think the only way that we're going to allow them into the game is if we actually sort of make mistakes to give them that sort of opportunity. I think their goals may come from our errors if they do score.
Yeah, I completely agree. One thing that I just wanted to touch on before we finished was James McNicholas from the Arscast has welcomed a baby boy into the world this weekend. So a quick shout out to him. And he put quite a lovely tweet, really. I'll just read it out. It says, "One day I'll take you to the football. you'll be cold and ask me which team we are. I'll buy a program for you, but it'll be me that keeps it in the drawer forever. And I thought those were just some really nice words for him to have written. And it kind of brought me back to some of my earlier times of watching Arsenal. And what I wanted to ask you was, when you were first getting involved with Arsenal and you're first watching Arsenal, what is kind of your earliest great memory of watching Arsenal growing up?
It would probably have to be. I remember it as well. I was like a young teenager I think I was in my brother's room for some reason watching the FA Cup final versus Man United, and it went all the way to a penalty shootout. I think this was in probably 2005, maybe. I might be getting the dates wrong slightly. But I can picture the kit. It had the sort of yellow seams going down the front. And Patrick Vieira stood up to take that final penalty. I can still remember that vapor rub on his shirt. You know, how he used to put that sort of greasy circle vapor rub on the just below his collar. I can remember him standing up and slotting it home. And yeah, I think that probably was the first time that I saw Arsenal lift a trophy. So I was too young really for the 2003 season. So yeah. I'd have to say that. What about you?
Yeah, so for me, I'm also too young to have really witnessed the Invincibles era, and I also wasn't really that interested in football at that age anyway. I was actually more of a rugby fan until I turned about 12 or 13. And then that's when I started to get more into football, and then consequently starting to follow Arsenal quite religiously. So my earliest great memory from Arsenal is when I was about 15 or so, and it had been after all of the I think, no, probably I was a bit older, probably about 17 or so. I'd been following Arsenal for about 6 or 7 years at this point, and we hadn't won a trophy at all. And I was just desperate to see us win a trophy. And it was the game where it was the FA Cup final, and I think we were playing Hull. And the moment was, well, there's quite a few good moments in this game, but it was, we went 2-0 down, and then Santi Cazorla stepped up and scored that free kick. And it was a wondrous free kick, incredible. And then I think that was the game where Ramsey scored the winner, didn't he, right at the end? And brilliant game of football. And that would be my earliest great memory of watching the Arsenal.
Yeah, I remember that game because we hadn't won a trophy for so long, and then we go 2-0 down to Hull, and it's like, what are we doing? We're throwing it away against one of the worst teams in the Premier League. I don't even know if they must have been in the Premier League at that point in time. But yeah, Santi Cazorla came in clutch that day. He was absolutely phenomenal, wasn't he?
Yeah, what a player. I think he's probably one of my favourite players from the whole Emirates era, to be honest, just because he always played with a smile on his face. And I think most notably it was that game that we performed well against Manchester City, where it's in every compilation where he takes on 3, 4, 5 different players running up the pitch and just shows you his desire. But unfortunately, his career at Arsenal had a bit of an early end, didn't it? And it's a bit of a shame. It would be nice to see him maybe in a coaching role one day in the future. But yeah, it was a great guy and a great player. But have you got anything else to add from this game from today and what to talk about?
I think so. I think we've covered just about everything.
Okay, so we will be back at the end of the week after we follow the massive game away at Anfield. Fingers crossed we can get 3 points in that match and retain our 8-point gap against Manchester City going into the last 9 games now of the season. It's getting closer. I'm getting excited, and we will see you next time, guys. Take care.
Take care, guys. Bye.